Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here with us today. My name is James McCarty, and I'm the Associate Director of Admission here at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. I am thrilled to have you here with us today for our Mind, Brain, and Teaching virtual information session. We'll kick things off just by sharing a brief agenda of what we'll cover here today. You'll hear from some of our faculty members within the Mind Brain Teaching, or MBT, as we'll refer to it, just to shorten things up. Hear from some of our faculty members in the program, an overview. I'll share about the admissions requirements, financial aid and scholarships, and we'll also have some time at the end for Q&A. Please feel free to utilize the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And as we go through today, ask questions throughout. Just know that we'll save those questions for the end. Also, please know that today's session is being recorded, and we will send out the recording from today's session usually within a week after the presentation has ended. So you will get that shortly to be able to re-review anything that we cover today on your own at your leisure. So some information about the Johns Hopkins School of Education. So first, Johns Hopkins, we are a massive world-renowned institution. Sorry, I wanted to make sure I had everything on the screen there. We are a massive world-renowned institution. We're very proud to say that this past year we were ranked the 13th best school of education by the U.S. News and World Report. And as you can see on the screen, there's some facts and information about the School of Education. We are one of 10 schools at Johns Hopkins University, and the university as a whole has a very long-standing tradition offering courses within the education field. That has taken place at Johns Hopkins for more than 115 years. And our faculty are world-renowned and very passionate about the work that they do. Johns Hopkins was the US's first research institution. And I think that history is really impactful for you as prospective students, because the work that our faculty are doing and the pride that they have in their work directly impacts you as a student through your classroom experience, and even after you're finished with us, on to whatever the next stage in your professional career is. So I am going to introduce some of our faculty presenters. With us today, we have Dr. Ranjini JohnBull. She is assistant professor within the Mind, Brain, and Teaching, and she's also the faculty lead for the program. And we also have Dr. Marielle Hardiman. She's professor emeritus, founder of the Neuroeducation Initiative and Mind Brain Teaching programs here at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Thank you again, everyone, and I will pass things off to Dr. JohnBull.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. To usher in a warm climate, what we like to do in the Mind, Brain, and Teaching certificate is to live out our mantra of connecting of creating a warm emotional climate, which we know that that the brain and the body learns better when we feel safe and secure, rather than when we feel afraid and when our fear responses are enacted. So what we do is that we introduce ourselves as faculty members by providing some background information on ourselves, both personally and professionally, so that our students can get to know us better and provide some connection between us personally. We do this for introductions between us and the students, and we also provide opportunities for our students to get to know one another between each other. So here's one of the ways that we do that. Let me just flip up to my slides. So I lived in North Carolina. There's my Carolina Panthers, and I traveled to Baltimore regularly, or I did pre-COVID. And my husband and I have 4 little daughters, and they're not so little anymore. They're ages 14, 10, 8, and 3. This is an older picture of them when they were 11, 8, 6, and 16 months. And we call our daughters our United Nations babies, because both my husband and I are bi-ethnic and biracial. I'm Sri Lankan, that's the Sri Lankan flag, and European American. And my husband is Nigerian, that's Nigerian flag, and European American. And these are the British and German flags, which we both have British and German heritage on both of our mother's sides, who are both Midwestern mamas, or now they're both Midwestern nanas. As a family, we all love to trips to the beach, playing soccer, dancing in our living rooms together, tent camping, and getting together with family and friends. Also, I identify as cisgender, heterosexual, and a female. Also, personally, I love all things Harry Potter, musical theater, Zumba, and truffle flavored foods. And the reason that I share this with you, this personal identity story, is that when you enter a graduate program, what we know from the learning sciences is that learning is social and it is enhanced when we get to know one another better and we learn together in communities of practice. So, speaking of identities, let me pass the mic over to my dear colleague and mentor, Dr. Hardiman, and we can learn a little bit more about her identities.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. JohnBull. So I'm Mariel Hardiman, and you'll see here just what I'd like to share with you about the work I've done. I'm going to go counterclockwise, but I'll start at 12 o'clock. I was a principal with Baltimore City Public Schools for a long time. And you know, they say once a principal, always a principal. So I am definitely a school principal and leader at heart. However, when I went to Hopkins, I had the opportunity there to share the work that I had started as a school principal in the field of neuroeducation. And so again, going counterclockwise, I was the originator of the Neuroeducation Initiative, which brought together researchers from across the university to look at how research in the neuro and cognitive sciences can inform education. And from that, one of the many outcomes of that was the Mind, Brain, and Teaching program, our way of disseminating that research to educators and related professions. I became a professor at the school. I was vice dean of faculty of academic affairs, vice dean of academic affairs for 5 years. And I served twice as the interim dean of the School of Education. While I was there, my second book on the brain-targeted teaching model was published. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that model later. That led me to doing lots of conferences. And, you know, I enjoy sharing the work with audiences, not just in our academic program, but in professional development. And I have had the opportunity to do research with some wonderful people, Dr. JohnBull in particular. There's a picture of Dr. Charles Lim, who is a creativity researcher and well known for his study, This Is Your Brain on Jazz. Personally, I have 2 grown daughters and 3 gorgeous little grandchildren. Love to salsa dance, love the beach. And my daughters gave me a pillow about my cooking. It says, what I like to make the best for dinner is reservations. So my world is really very fun, and I'm very grateful to be able to, you know, stay connected with Johns Hopkins and work very closely with Dr. JohnBull. So I'm going to move now to the next slide, and that's to give you a quick overview. Like, why would you do this certificate? Let's just go ahead and put all those circles up there at once. There we go. You know, many of our students come just because they want to advance their practice, and they know that learning how the brain thinks and learns, knowing just techniques to help children learn and retain information better is going to make them a better teacher. Others have gone on and left the field of education and became leaders in whatever field they were in, having learned what they did in this certificate. Many have gone on to policy positions. Many have gone on to be educational consultants. And then, the goal of lifelong learning is what we all need to pursue. So there's really no limit on what our graduates have done with this program. And then who are our graduates? In the next slide, you'll see educators, whether PK or 16 schools, counselors, school leaders. More and more higher education professionals are seeing the need to come and learn more about learning, the science of learning. Many higher education professionals are very good at their content, but know that they need to know more about how we think and learn, and teaching and learning is really important part of the job. Organizational leaders, whether in profit or nonprofit organization. Many start their own consulting firms or join consulting firms. We have most of our students, many of our students are parents themselves, and bring this work into their own family. Or they homeschool, and they're homeschool educators. And those who are comfortable in face-to-face education will find that online education is also really compatible with this program. So let's move now to the next slide. And Dr. JohnBull will take over from here.
Sure. I just want to share a few highlights about what this Mind, Brain, and Teaching certificate is. What we're doing is that we're focused on learning, sharing, and translating or applying what we know about how the body and brain thinks and learns and interacts with the world. And we're learning more about how to help our various spheres of influence become more kinder and more holistic education communities of practice. And we're trying to do this through the application of our new and our existing knowledge to our practice, specifically knowledge of from the learning sciences. So our courses and the learning sciences, we like to liken it to a big plate of Sri Lankan curry or meatballs and spaghetti. And so what we're trying to do is say that Sri Lankan curry or meatballs and spaghetti has many dishes and many components, just like our MBT program, and they each complement each other. So each of the components of our program are delicious on their own, but taken together and synthesized, they comprise a more holistic picture of how we might think about approaching education practice. While our program doesn't address everything, it is a helpful plate with many complementary dishes that provides education practitioners and professionals in any helping profession or leadership profession with a dynamic menu of options. But just like Sri Lankan curry or Italian meatballs and spaghetti, it's better when the learning science insights and strategies are utilized as an integrated system. That's my analogy for today. And what you'll also learn, wait, hang on one second. James, don't go too fast. What you'll also learn in a little bit is that analogies and metaphor and arts are part of what we also promote for memory and what we've learned about memory effects, which is why we're using this as a part of our little insight into what we promote through the Mind, Brain, and Teaching program. Okay, now, bit by bit, James, we're going to go through this next slide. Thank you. Sorry. One of the things that Dr. Hardiman and I are integrating into this program more is this culturally relevant neuroeducation conceptual framework. All right. So when we think about student outcomes, we are hoping that educators are looking toward making outcomes more equitable for all students, families, and communities. When we think about what influences outcomes for students, what we know, the next part of this that influences it, go ahead, James, is that they're influenced by lots of different factors within a student's learning environments. But what's most influential within a student's learning environments are the student's self-efficacy in their learning practices, and also the next component, the instructional practices, which we know are very influenced by culturally relevant practices and brain-targeted teaching practices positively influenced, which are influenced by the next component: personal teaching self-efficacy and general teaching self-efficacy. And what we're talking about in the learning environment here is the teacher. And oh, sorry, I forgot the cultural competence. So we've got, go ahead, and I'm going to let you go ahead and flip through all of it, James, and then I'll just talk through it. I normally am directing the slides while we do this. Thank you, James. So in this box, what you're seeing right here are the components of the educator's factors that influence the student's self-efficacy and learning practices that we know influence students' outcomes. The teacher is the one that is in the classroom, that has the superpowers, that can lift a student up, that can raise the expectations, that can find and analyze the students' learning behaviors and diagnose them and help them to figure out what they need to help persist and find the strategies to push them forward to help them achieve their goals and their learning outcomes. And through those instructional practices. What we know about those instructional practices is that they will do those, they will persist and find the instructional practices if they have these sets of beliefs: personal teaching self-efficacy and general teaching self-efficacy, meaning that they have expectations of themselves that they believe that they can teach, they believe that they can manage the classroom, they believe that they can develop relationships with students, and this general teaching self-efficacy that they believe that anybody that can walk into the classroom can do it, no matter who walks in the classroom, they can teach and get results. Those two beliefs, if they're high, what that means is that teacher will be more likely to persist in the face of challenges. They'll be more likely to pull out all different kinds of strategies. They will go to all kinds of lengths to find different things to do to help students. When those beliefs are low, generally it's much more difficult for those teachers to persist. They will go to the easier strategies or a worksheet and say, well, it wasn't me, it was the kid. I taught them, they didn't learn it. Right. What we know also is that those personal teaching self-efficacy beliefs are influenced by cultural competence. Cultural competence is a construct, it's a set of beliefs about self, about others, and about systems. Those beliefs are about whether or not students are innately intelligent, whether or not this group of people can do it, whether or not this group of people is lazy, whether or not this group of people has the ability to X, Y, Z, right? These sets of beliefs are about generalizations. They're awarenesses about others. They're awarenesses about self. We know that those beliefs influence our beliefs about self and our beliefs about our abilities to teach, our beliefs about our abilities to teach others. And we know they influence our practices when we're in the classroom with students. So we also know that these beliefs and influence our practices within multiple layers of systems. You can go ahead and click through the rest, James. Systems of in communities of power and privilege. It's not isolated, right? It's influenced by different schools, school leaders, our colleagues, and sets of policies and states and all of those things. However, what we have also learned is that when people learn a little bit about what the brain and body can think and do, and some strategies about how to improve learning and instruction, we find that teacher self-efficacy beliefs can be improved. And we find that teachers are much more hopeful about their abilities and about students' abilities. So we've constructed this culturally relevant neuroeducation framework because we want to leverage these two frameworks about brain-targeted teaching, which you're about to hear about, and culturally relevant pedagogy, about leveraging students' assets and their knowledge and what we know about the brain and about strategies that leverage learning sciences knowledge to help improve instructional practices. Anyway, this is one of the things that we are working on and that we know is helping teachers, because we have done some studies on it. In the next slide, we are sharing the outcome and the citation from our most recent publication. And it seems like this is stuck. I'll just share. Is that stuck for you, James? Or oh, here we go. Our most recent publication is Exploring Teaching Self-Efficacy Changes Through Neuroeducation Professional Development. What we found through 3 different cohorts of teachers who took a professional development where they learned about the brain-targeted teaching model, which is Dr. Hardiman's beautiful model that talks about the learning sciences strategies through this 6-target framework about how to apply the learning sciences to classroom practice, was that when teachers learn about basic brain anatomy and physiology and neuroscience misconceptions, their general teaching self-efficacy increases. And it seems, our hypothesis is that it seems like their implicit biases decrease. And we also, what we did was throughout this semester-long professional development, they created learning units where we encouraged them to take their most boring learning unit that they taught and integrate the brain targets into this. And through that, after that, we measured their self-efficacy beliefs, and their personal teaching efficacy beliefs also increased through 3 different cohorts across 2 different years. And so we believe that their application, actually going back and demonstrating and practicing this work with their students, coming back and working with their colleagues, sharing their successes and their challenges, going back and demonstrating it again, working with their students, coming back and collaborating, and experiencing that success and that collaboration with their colleagues, then that boosted their self-efficacy beliefs as well. There's a lot more theory and science behind that, but that's the gist of it. That the bottom line is that when teachers understand how the brain and body thinks and learns, they tend to feel much more hopeful about themselves and about students, and don't buy into the misconceptions and biases and myths about the brain and generalizations and overgeneralizations about children and what they can or cannot do. So with that, I think I'm handing the mic back over to you, Dr. Hardiman.
Hi again to everybody. In this slide, what you see in this concept map is just how the 3 areas that Dr. JohnBull just talked about link together. So we start with the learning sciences and broadly talk about what topics are really important that educators should know. For example, we talk about the importance of emotion and personal connection in learning, whether you're a preschooler or a graduate student. That's important. We talk about attention and the importance of executive function and the attentional functions of the brain. We talk about memory and the different memory systems and how we can help teachers to have teaching strategies that make information stick. Because if students don't remember the content they're taught, they're never going to be able to get to the next stage, and that's creative application of knowledge. And so all of this is operationalized then in the brain-targeted teaching model. And I'm going to describe that to you briefly in the next slide. And the effect of it, the hope is inclusive, effective teaching with greater teaching efficacy and leading to learning and better leading. And as Dr. JohnBull said, we have evidence now through our 3 different trials that knowledge of neuroeducation and brain-targeted teaching, as we have taught these 3 cohorts, did in fact improve effective teaching and teacher efficacy. So we're real proud of that, and Dr. JohnBull's work and attention with teaching efficacy and bringing that into the work of brain-targeted teaching. So I'll go next to the slide and talk to you about brain-targeted teaching model briefly. There are 6 components. Whoop, there we go. There are 6 components to the brain-targeted teaching model, but I like to chunk them into 3 kind of areas. One is really focusing on the environment, whether you are in a school, whether you're in an office, whether you work online, whether you work in small groups or with large groups of people, the emotional environment is affecting you all the time. And speaking of children, we know the effects of positive environment on learning, and we also know the effects of toxic stress and of negative emotions, and how that downshifts, which is a metaphor for not being able to really think through what you're doing because your emotions take over your thinking. Next, we talk about the physical learning environment and the importance of that, and how the physical environment speaks to how we feel about our students. Is the environment warm? Is it welcoming? Does it reflect the cultural competencies that the teacher is able to impart to the students? Does it reflect the culture of the students? Can the students see themselves in that environment? Does it reflect their own artwork and their own work? So we talk a lot about that with novelty and how the physical environment can promote attention and a sense of well-being. Next, we talk about content mastery, and we start with thinking about what are our goals and how do we show the goals and the essential questions of our learning, whether again preschool or higher education, and how do we show that in a visual way, connecting all the dots so that students are able to see the big picture of what they're learning. Next, we talk in Brain Target 4 about memory and different ways that memory is created. How do students retain information the best? And there we embed in the idea of arts integration, which is another part of the research that Dr. JohnBull and I and a few others have done together. And that is the effects of arts on integration on long-term retention of academic content. And by the way, just as a heads up, we have found advantages for students who are learning with and through the arts versus traditional instruction for all students, but especially for students who are the most vulnerable in our school districts, in our schools, students who struggle the most with traditional teaching and learning. And then we get into the last kind of big bubble, and I think about here with the model, and that is once students have mastered, we're not finished teaching. They have to be able to think creatively with what they know, solve problems, and this is really a whole different way and an important way of teaching, thinking about divergent thinking rather than simply always looking for the right answer. And then assessment, which runs all through the model. And we think about assessment for instruction, not just of instruction, assessment for learning. Okay, so we're going to go to the next slide, and you'll hear from us throughout the program. And you've heard Dr. JohnBull talk about brain and body. And so our approach is you're not just learning about what comes out of the brain. You're learning about what comes out of the whole brain-body system. And so we look at and teach explicitly what are the skills of executive function, why are they important, and what do students need to know and be able to do within the domain of executive function skills, which is very tightly associated with learning reading skills, math skills, etc. But that's not the only thing. we're also learning within the context of our bodies. We're learning within the context of our environment, and that's known as embodied cognition. So we combine those together, and one way to combine executive function and embodied cognition is through the arts, integrating the arts. So you'll learn about that also within our program. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So the advantages, it is grounded in this accessible framework of brain-targeted teaching. It has been applied in any context. It's been applied in, obviously, school classrooms, but also in corporate training sessions. One of the professors at another university used the brain-targeted teaching model to develop the strategic plan for the whole school, supported by the president of the university. And so we think about it as being able to be accessible and translatable to any professional context. And you'll find in the next slide, right now, you can learn about the model through the first book, and the second book is the one that we currently use, and that will be in a second edition within the next year or so. And various articles that we've done. There's a website there, braintargetedteaching.org, if you want to just explore around. Now, you're going to wonder, all right, so now you told us about the content of the certificate. What does it look like? So the next slide. It is a 15-credit graduate certificate. That's 5 courses, 3 credits each. And as we talked about, it investigates human learning and development. With this, and we draw on, as we have said to you before, multiple disciplines: cog-sci, psychology, brain science. It is not just brain science. So if you want a degree in brain science, go to the School of Medicine. We use all of these integrated fields to inform what we do in our programs, and everything we do is focused on research to practice. So how does what you learn look like in your own context and in your own practice? And it is a fully online format. The time frame is 5 semesters, 2 academic years plus 1 summer. And there's a second one that we'll talk about in a minute. When you apply, you're part of a cohort, and you will move through the 5 courses with your cohort, which is really an advantage in having personal relationships with the folks you're studying with. So now Dr. JohnBull is going to break that down for you a little further.
All right, well, we have a sequence of 5 courses for the Mind, Brain, and Teaching Graduate Certificate. It begins with Explorations in Mind, Brain, and Teaching, which provides an overview of the learning sciences, where you learn some information about brain structure and function, some misconceptions about learning and the brain, and instructional strategies that are informed by learning sciences literature through the brain-targeted teaching model. In Fundamentals of Cognitive Development, there's a focus on typical developmental trajectories and the psychological theories of human development that covers the lifespans. And in this course, you work on developing this topic of interest and dive deeply into some literature on your topic of interest. In Neurobiology of Learning Differences, the focus is on the spectrum of neurodiversity and the teaching and learning implications of development and different aspects of neurodiversity through several different frameworks. This course also includes a focus on trauma-informed practice in education. And then in Cognitive Processes of Learning, Literacy, and Numeracy, we focus on the learning sciences associated literature with those 2 major areas of learning. This course was developed in response to educators' interest in the 2 main areas that are assessed in the K-12 settings, and these sets of skills and cognitive processes that are integrated throughout our lives in every context. And then finally, in Special Topics in Brain Sciences, we focus on emotions, memory, and attention in this course, where we survey a number of different fields that are explored in the earlier courses, but go a little bit more deeply. And we want you to see some of the other areas in the learning sciences that are also applicable to teaching and learning professions and leadership professions throughout the K-16 contexts, and also any professional contexts. So in this option A traditional structure, you would be taking one course per semester at a time over the course of 2 academic years, with one summer in between. All right, and then we also have a plan B, an option B accelerated option. So in response to the desire of some of our students in previous cohorts to take an accelerated path for our certificate, we now provide a plan B for the certificate. So what this does is this allows our students to apply for financial aid and federal student loans, because you can take 2 courses in the fall, you can take 2 courses in the spring, and then you can take your final special topics capstone course in the summer. So you're allowed to take it in a condensed fashion. And by doing this, I think you meet the criteria for applying for the federal student loans, which if you were only taking the graduate certificate and only taking 1 course at a time, then our previous cohorts before this option was available weren't able to apply for a federal student aid. All right, so our delivery is online and it is asynchronous. We do have some synchronous time, but it is billed as an asynchronous program because we accept and we serve students from around the globe. And we do this because this allows for greater equity and access to our program, and the education that our program provides. And this is a major priority for our School of Education and for our program. We provide video lectures, we provide digital interactive experiences. We also provide discussions for you to interact with your cohort mates in Canvas. And we also provide projects, both individual projects and group projects. We do have synchronous sessions that are optional. We do not require them because we are working with multiple time zones, but we record them and then we upload them. Even though they're not required, we do regularly have our students from around the globe Zoom in at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the morning, at different time zones. And everybody's just really excited to see one another at whatever time you can make it, even if it's for 15 minutes. It's so lovely to get together live in those sessions together. We also use multiple tech tools like Flipgrid, now it's called Flip. We use VoiceThread, Padlet. Some of our instructors use Kahoot and other tech tools that liven up the online learning space. All right. The outcomes of a Mind, Brain, and Teaching graduate certificate or degree are numerous, and they are there are a wide variety of them for different people and different purposes, because everybody comes to our program with a different goal in mind. But we generally put the outcomes in a couple of different buckets. We think of you all as research translators in professional practice and neuroeducators when you leave our program. What happens is that you gain skills for digesting research literature, and we provide you with some knowledge and skills for doing that throughout the program. You end up deeply rooting yourself in bodies of literature that are relevant to your practice, because we provide you with ample choice to choose things that you want to look into and to research throughout the program. You produce projects that are immediately informed by research to practice, and you engage in learning experiences that mirror what we ask educators and professionals to do. So what we try to do is we use principles and practices in our teaching so that you're immersed in neuroeducation experiences. On the neuroeducator side, what you're doing is gaining essential knowledge concerning this nexus between the mind, brain, and teaching research with culturally relevant approaches to integrating this knowledge into practice. And you leave with tools and projects ready for implementation within your professional practice if you so want to. We definitely encourage you to not use hypothetical projects. We want you to use something that is like meaningful to you. So if you're not a K-12 educator and the assignment looks like it's geared for K-12, we will help you adapt it so it makes it meaningful for your practice. That is what we always do and we always have done. What our students always tend to be after they even one course in, they tend to be point people. They serve as point people within their professional practice for knowledge for the learning sciences. People start to come to you as a knowledge bearer about the learning sciences. People want to understand, hey, what have you learned about this thing? Can you tell me a little bit of that? Can you share with me what you learned from your Hopkins course? And you leave as a fluent online 21st century learner who is able to navigate and learn through multiple online modalities, which I think is a very essential skill nowadays. All right. Here are just a few things that our students have to say about the Mind, Brain, and Teaching program. You can see a few quotes here from our alumni who have graduated from our certificate, and I'll let you read those here. And I'll just read one in the center here. This says, "This program has truly been the perfect marriage of my love for science and my love of teaching. I have learned to be more scientifically literate through this program by being given the tools to analyze and understand human learning and development." All right, and then one of the other opportunities that is unique and lovely about this program and Johns Hopkins is that you can apply for the Masters of Science in Education with a concentration in educational studies with the Mind, Brain, and Teaching certificate. So you can choose the Mind, Brain, and Teaching certificate, and you can add on elective courses with a customized course of study to reflect your professional development goals to build out your own Masters of Science in Education program that is an interdisciplinary Masters of Science in Education. So what this does is this lives out our Hopkins priority of interdisciplinary studies through this MS Ed option. And I highly encourage you to think about this option if you're thinking about the Mind, Brain, and Teaching certificate, because we have lovely courses across our entire School of Education that would enrich and complement the Mind, Brain, and Teaching courses. Thanks, James.
Thank you so much to Dr. JohnBull and Dr. Hardiman for sharing a little bit more information and an overview of the program. Students, I hope that you are excited and invigorated to take that next step. And that's really kind of, I'll say, the passing of the baton, taking that next step. I personally am very task oriented. So I will share with all of you that the great next step is reaching out and scheduling a one-on-one appointment with me to talk through in more depth the admissions process, how to apply, what that looks like, and some of the information that I'll be sharing with you today. We can tailor responses a little bit more specifically for each of you. So as far as the admission requirements, I'm going to just pull everything on the screen here. So you can see that there is an online application that you'll complete. You can go to the School of Education to any of our admissions web pages. And if you scroll to the very bottom, there's a large gold block, and you'll see that will take you to the online application to begin that process. There is an $80 application fee that you'll pay at the time when your application is submitted. We ask that you submit official transcripts from all post-secondary institutions attended. I do want to stress that it's all institutions attended, not just institutions that you've received a degree from. So we'll look for all of those. And as far as official transcripts, they need to be sent directly from the institution to us. Those can be done physically, they can be mailed to us, they can be sent virtually. I think probably the quickest and easiest route is to go the virtual option. I'll just encourage all of you, make sure that you send them to the School of Education, to our admissions office. Johns Hopkins is a very large institution, and they can go, I've had students that will accidentally send transcripts to the wrong school or to undergraduate admissions, and it gets tricky sometimes to track those down. So just be vigilant that you're sending those directly to us at the School of Education. There is a brief essay or personal statement, and essentially that's an opportunity for you to share your interest in this program. Tell us about why you're interested in the program, why you think you'd be a good fit, why you're passionate about this field, and what you're hoping to gain from this program. You'll also submit a professional resume or CV, along with 2 letters of recommendation. I always encourage students, one of those letters of recommendation, if possible. We encourage students to submit one of them being an academic letter of recommendation in background. So someone that can speak to your ability and skill set as a student, your ability to conduct research, scholarly writing, working with groups or in a team. Ideally, if possible, at least one of those being academic in background. But joking, but yet still being serious, I tell students, this is not a time to be humble. You want to put your best foot forward and ultimately pick the 2 best individuals to write those letters of recommendation for you. Lastly, as you can see, there is no GRE required for this program, so I can hear your cheers of excitement and applause from miles away, but the GRE is not included in the evaluation process for this program. For any students that have any type of international credentials, first we ask that you, as a component to the admissions process, that you submit either an IELTS or a TOEFL score. If you've completed 2 years or more of post-secondary academic work in the U.S., there is a waiver that you can, have this requirement waived. That is built into the application, and you'll just fill out that form and ask for that waiver if you've had 2 years of post-secondary education within the United States. For any student that has done any type of studies outside of the US or English-speaking Canada, for your transcripts, we will ask for an official evaluation. If you go through that website that you see on your screen, through the admissions pages, there is a section just for international students. You'll see that we recommend there's 7 different partner companies that we utilize to go through the transcript evaluation process. I'll just encourage you to make sure that you select the course by course evaluation of your transcripts. Essentially, you'll have your transcript sent to that whatever institution you select. I believe WES is by far the biggest and probably most heavily selected. You'll send your transcripts to that organization. They conduct the course by course evaluation and then send that evaluation along with your transcripts to us. Again, if you have any other follow-up questions about that, please feel free to keep in touch and stay connected through the entire process moving forward. On your screen, you'll see the updated tuition and fees information. So for online courses, you can see that the cost of attendance is $1,025 per credit with a $20 per credit technology fee. So in total for a 3-credit course, that comes out to $3,135 per course. We've already talked about the $80 application fee, and then every semester there's a $175 registration fee that you'll pay to enroll each semester as well. Sorry, let me bring all this up. We do offer a limited number of partial need-based scholarships. I encourage all students, if you are able to do so, to complete the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. That is all that we ask for, if possible. If you are able to submit that, you do not need to have a FAFSA on file to be evaluated for scholarships. But again, I do encourage you to do so if you're able to. There's also a whole section on our scholarships, financial aid and scholarship website that also encourages external scholarships as well. Probably the largest is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That's probably the biggest that we encourage students to check out. But there are funding opportunities outside of the School of Education as well. And again, encouraging you to fill out the FAFSA. We do have a little bit more than 5 minutes remaining for Q&A. So again, I'll encourage any of our participants today, if you have any questions, please feel free to add those in the Q&A, and we'll be happy to answer those as we go through. I guess just to kind of get conversation going for Dr. JohnBull and Dr. Hardiman, a question that I get a lot is, if I'm applying to this program, how can I stand out as an applicant? What do you look for when you're reviewing applications? How can I put my best foot forward and submit the best application possible going through this process?
Dr. JohnBull and I both have for years gone through applications. So we both have a wealth of experience in that. And I can answer for myself, and then I'll let Dr. JohnBull answer. I really do look for the statement. I want to know really what it is that student, that particular individual is looking for in the program. And sometimes they think it's a program about neuroscience, period. And then we need to redirect them. But most of the time, I think most students, just about all students, have a really great idea of what they want to study. And some it's more global, and other it's pretty specific. But we look at that, and then we look at the writing sample just to be sure there is writing requirements in the course, so in the different courses. And so we do look at what kind of a sample they send us. Dr. JohnBull?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Hardiman. We really do look very closely at that personal statement for both writing quality, and we look at the personal statement for a clear idea of what you want to do and what your connection is to the Mind, Brain, and Teaching program, what you're hoping to get out of it, what you're trying to study. We used to require a writing sample. We do not require the writing sample any longer. So we do look at the personal statement for your writing quality and for clarity about your goals, your personal and professional goals for the program. Yeah.
Thank you. Looks like we got a question from Richard. Richard says, I work in the learning design and banking. I've studied leadership development using neuroscience at MIT, and I'm looking to increase my knowledge in this area. I work with people new to the workforce as well as executives, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on this program for Richard's application specifically.
Richard would join a number of students, probably present and past, who do work in the other fields besides education, work in the corporate world, and either train or lead in the corporate world. And so I think that he would find other individuals that have the same goal that he does. Yep, Dr. JohnBull?
Yeah, learning happens across the lifespan and in all organizations, right? So if you're in a leadership role, you're absolutely working with other adults and helping them along in their careers and learning how to, to operate better in their own careers. So I think you would need to let us understand how you want to improve your knowledge in facilitating the learning of the adults around you. So how to improve your knowledge of facilitating learning for the professional development of the adults, those novice career folks, that are coming in, and the executives and the other spaces. So I think just emphasize those couple of points.
And I'll kind of stick myself out here and say that while this was originally designed for educators, we have expanded so much of the content to include those from other fields and the corporate world, the nonprofit world. Once in a while, we get someone who says that literacy and numeracy is not something that I would be focused on. That would be more in the education field. And as the faculty lead, I think Dr. JohnBull is open to substituting a course for that, if that is something that you'd like to do. Other people still like to learn about the neurobiology of literacy and numeracy, especially if you have your own children and you want to know how to teach them best. But I think that you'll find that this program is really appropriate. I have had people contact me recently who are in the AI virtual reality world, and they want to connect into what we're doing in mind, brain, and teaching, because they see a very strong connection there as well. So I think you'd be fine.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hardiman and Dr. JohnBull. And thank you, Richard. Great question. I am not seeing any other questions in the Q&A right now. But for everyone attending today, again, please remember to keep in touch and stay connected. I think that's probably one of the most important pieces of information today, is just understanding that you are never going through this process alone. We are all here to work with you, to help you and support you, from looking into the program all the way through to graduation and what lies next. You'll see both my contact information as well as Miss Camilla Mika Sims. She's the Senior Academic Program Coordinator for the Mind, Brain, and Teaching program. Again, we are all here to help and support you through this process. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We look forward to chatting more, and have a great rest of the day, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.